You're listening to Across the Pondcast. Cybersecurity rants and war stories from both sides of the Atlantic.
Hello and welcome to Across the Pondcast, a show where we talk and occasionally rant about cybersecurity topics with perspectives from both sides of the Atlantic. I'm Tib3rius. I'm joined, as always, by my lovely co-host, Mr. Andy Swift, and today we're also joined by Andrew Wilson. Andrew has worked as a software engineer, pen tester, and now does independent research on AI and offensive security. But today, he's here to share some war stories with us. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Andy's also here. Hello, Andy.
Hello. Yeah, don't forget me.
How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, mate. I'm not too bad. It's the middle of the day here, and unusually for the UK, it's 30 odd degrees. It's very sweaty.
Can you convert that to American, please?
Oh, Fahrenheit. No.
Yeah.
I can't. I actually can't. If I were to guess it, I would have said 90 something. But no, I don't speak that weird language. You use inches as well, which blows my mind. I can't ever get my head around that. I'm just happy with centimeters. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you guys go like quarters, 3/5, or whatever. It's like I have no idea.
3/16.
Yeah, I don't know, no idea. It's like speaking moon to me. So yeah, very much a fan of a metric system, me. Anyway, right, we're not here to talk about rulers. So.
No, we're not. Andrew, you're in Mexico. What units do you use?
What do we use? Oh, we use Celsius here. We're on the metric system as well for pretty much everything.
Yes, there you go.
All right, there you go. Andy, you got to win this episode.
I need a chalkboard or something to mark these up on the wins. It's not many.
Well, before we start, this show is made possible thanks to our sponsors. If you want to sponsor an episode, please send an email to sponsors@acrossthepodcast.net for more details. So, Andrew, you have some war stories for us. Which one do you think is a good one to start with?
I always like talking about the beginning, right? It kind of goes back to the last time we talked together, which was like, how did I transition into this whole thing? But it's also a good starting point for kind of a journey, right? So the first engagement I was ever on, I was actually working as a software engineer, and I was hired to do an integration project. So they were getting rid of the legacy system. We were moving to the new system. And we were in the middle of implementing it. I just kept noticing that everything was breaking all the time, right? Just random stuff. Like you put in data and it would barf, and it would put in whatever and it would fall apart. And eventually I went to my boss and I just said, hey, I'm worried this thing has some real problems with it. I think you should let me take not a lot of time. Just give me like 40 hours. You're already paying for me, whatever. Let me just look at it and then I'll let you know what I find type of stuff. And my boss was all about it. He was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. It's a good investment. And you got to put it in perspective, this software was really expensive to the degree that the university I was working for, they had to like pull from funds in order to bring this integration in. And so this was like a really like high profile integration sort of changeover system type of thing. And so I spent, I don't know, maybe 40 hours, probably put some more time into it because it was super interesting. It was a .NET web application and it was a pile of trash. I mean, short version, it was just really bad. And as I was going through it, it was like layers of complexity. In some cases, it didn't even need it. And there were problems with like auth between the different layers. There was a whole bunch of exposed features and exposed functionality that wasn't supposed to be there. Found SQL injection and cross-site scripting and pulled secrets out of this whole thing. And I was excited about it because for me, it was like, this is the first time I ever had a chance to do an assessment. And I thought, wow, this is great. And it was complicated enough that, I'm pulling the binaries and looking at them in the IL spy and these types of things to go through and reconstruct it. And yeah, it was good results, right? And I showed them to my boss, and my boss was like, really, how this is crazy, this is bad. And so we brought it to the company, and they immediately tried to deny everything, right? Immediately it was like, cover your butt, like none of that happened, like this isn't real. They tried to claim I didn't have the secrets. They tried to claim there wasn't SQL injection. I mean, it was like they were pushing really hard against it. And I said, great, if that's the case, then we're going to release the report. Since you're saying they're non-issues, I'm going to release the report. And this software was software that universities used everywhere, right? So like this was used in every major university that you can think of, Columbia, MIT, Carnegie Mellon, everybody uses this to manage the same sort of stuff. And so I released it. I sent it to our peer group and I said, hey, we did a security audit. Here's what we found. They don't seem to think this is a thing. And as soon as I did that, everything went to shit really fast. Like it went really bad. Right. It was effectively, if you think about it, like publishing a bunch of O-Days. I guess I never really thought about that until now. And they were all real. That's the thing. I was like, they could deny it, which they tried to, but it was all legitimate. And so then the whole community freaked out. And all of a sudden I went from this like little teeny 7-page, 8-page report to they invited me out for 3 conferences. I was giving talks on it. I was walking people through the vulnerabilities. And it was like crazy because, you know, in my head, it wasn't that big of a deal. But when you like take it to the context of, yeah, it's a lot of crazy vulnerabilities in this incredibly important software, it started getting really salty, like to the point where we thought, okay, maybe we're going to have to talk to lawyers or something, right? Because they were pushing back a little bit. And it all got resolved, right? It all got resolved and they did fix it. But it was like, I always remember it because there was like, on the one hand, it was this technical thing. I definitely wasn't a consultant at the time, so I was not as good at communicating bad news, I suppose. And so like, I'm excited. I'm like, yeah, you know, we messed it up and look what we did and that type of language. I think that didn't help. But I ended up getting, I want to say essentially fired. I ended up getting pushed out over it. That was sort of the best part of your learning lesson, which was I did this test. We got all sorts of news, all sorts of acclaim, and everybody loved it except for the person who ran my department, who was one of the lead advocates for bringing the software in the first place. And all of a sudden, now they've got their name attached to this project where we're reporting massive major problems that took 6 to 8 months to resolve and push the project behind. And I remember I'm literally on the one hand getting like, I don't want to call it national attention, but I'm getting a bunch of attention on this thing, very positive from a community. And then like my performance review was like, does work often to the detriment of the firm and like not what are you supposed to be doing? Like wasn't hired for these things. And so I quit. I just left the company and I said, great, I appreciate your opinion. But yeah, that was my first engagement. It was, you know, you get right into the controversy of it and you see it from every angle. And you see it from the developer side who's put this like crazy thing together. And then you see it from the internal side where you got to live with the consequence of failed software, right? Which is you put your name on it, you brought it in, you're spending money that wasn't even ours to spend. And you got to go explain to a group of people who don't understand any of that. And I think it all makes sense backwards, right? When you look at it kind of with time. But that was the first engagement I was in. I ended up, I'm going to say I lost my job for it, but I definitely got pushed out over it. It was definitely not to my benefit internally, even though externally, like it was very well recognized, I suppose.
That's a heck of a first job. My first pen test, I remember finding Telnet with a password of like password or something. And I was really excited over that. But that's an incredible first engagement. But my God, how things have changed though, in terms of like how people receive information like that now. I like to think there's more companies out there that do more useful things with it now and so have bounty programs and such things, or have that sort of attitude of it's okay to screw up as long as you sort of fix the problem. Even like your big hitters like Cisco and people have like vulnerabilities all of the time, but they have programs and they have recognition and they publish their findings quite often as well. And it's that kind of putting your hands up and going, yeah, it's not impossible. We aren't perfect all the time. It is possible we do have flaws, but here's the thing, we pay attention and we fix them as they come in. That sort of, no, nothing happening here, sweep under the rug kind of attitude. I'd like to hope it's disappearing, but you still hear stories of it, don't you? That's the thing.
Yeah. This would have been in like 2006 for context, right? Because I don't think I was married yet. So it would have been a long time ago now that I say it out loud. And in defense, you know, after they went through this game of like heavy like resistance to it even existing, they eventually actually turned it into like a marketing campaign. And so they fixed the software and then they came to their big national event in Vegas And they were selling it like, oh, we're battle hardened. We looked at it from all sorts of lenses, and now we're the new and improved, like way better than before software. And we fixed all these security things. And they turned it upside down, I think, in a real way for customers. Because if you don't know the story and you just see them going, hey, we had a security audit, and it's easy to translate that into something different. But yeah, they eventually got there, right? They eventually did it, but more for, I'll call it marketing reasons is how it felt, but they got there.
Sounds like they had to.
I think developers, like some developers can get like a real ego over their code when you point out stuff that's wrong with it. And I've only encountered it a few times. Most tests, I think, are received pretty well these days. But there's definitely the for anyone who's not watching the video, for anyone who's audio only, Andrew just shook his head. We'll talk about that in a sec. In my experience, anyway, with my customers, pen tests are usually received pretty well, pen test reports. But I have had ones in the past where the developers have just kicked off a massive fuss. I had one person tell me that the SQL injection I found wasn't relevant because it was in the admin page. And I'm like, are all your web admins also database admins? And they're like, no. It's like, well, they are kind of now. So it's just silly. And I get it. Like, there are unfortunately some companies that punish developers for vulnerabilities that are found. I get it from that perspective. If that's what's going on, yeah. But I would hope that's sort of rarer. That's definitely not how you should treat your developers. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone's going to code bugs. Yeah. The point is you've just got to learn from them. And if you have got bugs that are coded, make sure that they take some training and try not to do it again.
I'm very good at coding bugs into the things I develop, as you well know. But yeah, it's project delays is another big thing I picked up on there, and like the knock-on effect of your reports. I feel that's a huge thing in pen testing in general, is sometimes the work we do does push projects back quite considerably, especially when someone at some level has made a seriously bad decision and not vetted whatever it is they are bringing on board, be it hardware, be it software, or an application. And it might have been months and months, 6 months, a year in the planning to bring some of this stuff in, and then all of a sudden someone turns up like us and just goes, no, it's terrible. You can't possibly release this to the public. And then you can imagine the absolute mess that causes their end in terms of project timelines, funding, all of that sort of stuff. So there's a huge knock-on effect to it. And I remember there's one guy who works for us who's fairly early in his career journey, also a software developer actually. But by the way, software, not to blow smoke up, but software developers make absolute brilliant pen testers eventually. I know a few now who have just turned out to be absolutely incredible. But it was one of his first vulnerabilities that he discovered on site, and it was with a major web application that controls, careful what I say here, a lot of stuff to do with telecommunications in the UK anyway. So a lot of people buy into it. So similar sort of thing. There's lots of organizations buying into this one product, but if the actual development team for it is really small, it's only about 4 people, it's kind of crazy. And the company overall is probably no more than 50 to 100 people, I'd say. So it's not like a large corporation, but some of the things some of the bugs we found in it allows you to do things like privilege escalation, all sorts of that, things like that. There's SQL injection on the login page. So like all sorts of mad stuff that you just don't expect to find in that sort of level of software. But that company was really not quite, I don't think they were used to having bugs reported to them. So immature might be the wrong word, but the way they handled it was it sort of has echoes of what you were saying there in terms of they weren't too sure what to do with it. There's a lot of pushback initially going, whoa, it can't possibly be us. Do we need to get our legal teams involved? Do we need to do X, Y, Z? And then all of a sudden you go from, well, I'm just helping you to report a vulnerability to like, oh my God, are you going to take legal action against me? What's going on here? So yeah, it escalates quite quick, doesn't it, sometimes? It just depends who you...
One of the things I would always tell the junior pen testers is, one, over time, you should be developing a little bit of empathy for the people we're doing this with, right? Because there's consequences. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing you should develop is intuition, because some of it's predictable. Like we did a lot of work in the past with like M&A. And so it's like our job was to come in and assess a piece of software and find problems. And as a part of an acquisition, and you've got these deals that are being built on what ends up being part of the quality results of the pen test that you're doing. So if you give them kind of a bad grade, in a way, it's not an unreasonable expectation for them that they're going to look at it and go, now they're going to try to hose me on the M&A, or maybe it's going to hold up the deal, or maybe they're going to back out of the deal, depending on how bad the software is. And so you sort of eventually kind of like see it from both sides. I wasn't expecting that on my very first engagement to see that level of like rigor. Like in my head, I thought, man, I was hitting home runs and this is great. And then when you see what people have to live with on the other side of it as a consequence, like it's a very real and tangible thing for them.
It is. And you build up that sort of hash of responses over time, I think, don't you? And like how to help them best rather than, because I remember when we started pen testing years ago, there were a couple of Czech team leaders who we were working under at the time. And the attitude was very much, here's a huge vulnerability. And you're kind of, there you go, you're on your own, you fix it. But I think there's as you get more and more experienced over it, there's this whole sort of array of aftercare that has to come with it as well. And you do build up that sort of cache of responses of how to speak to them, how to calm them down, how to hold their hands through like the remediation process. Because some of this stuff's going to be scary for them as well. They're probably sometimes not even used to it. There might be they've been happily coding away for years. No one's ever pointed out anything like this. And all of a sudden you're tearing their baby apart. It's quite a bitter pill to swallow. And it takes a lot of something on their end to admit wrongs and have the attitude of, well, I want to fix it rather than try and defend it, could be quite a hard thing to do. So yeah, compassion.
Yeah. I remember some of those Czech team leaders would literally write, we would go to test a Windows network, like an Active Directory network, and like use pass the hash to like get into stuff. And the report, they would just write, this is unfixable in Windows, like recommendation, maybe switch to Linux or something. And I'm like, that's like unrealistic, isn't it? I mean, I get it. Yeah. Passing the hash is pretty much, you can't disable it. Sure. It's kind of the way Windows works, but like, that's not a good recommendation.
Not for an enterprise who is entirely invested in Windows infrastructure. Just going, maybe use Linux instead. Yeah. That'll get you into trouble. But there's ways of softening that blow, right? And helping them through that.
I feel like I'm always in trouble. Like I didn't send it over as like a thing, but it's a true story. We almost got arrested in Las Vegas at a DEF CON, my team. We were all hanging out and I took everyone to dinner at a restaurant. While we were there at the restaurant, the guy who was on the floor, the manager on the floor, he says, "Hey, you guys are here, for that DEF CON challenge," because we had all our badges and the t-shirts, and this was a really long time ago. So they're like, yeah, we're here hanging out. He goes, "Hey, here's the deal." He's like, "We've got these iPads and they're not working right now. So when I show people the menu, they can't even see it because it has to like be connected to the system. The system's down." And we're like, "Okay." And he's like, "Do you guys think you could hack it and make it work?" And I was like, 100% we can hack it and make it work. Right. And so I've got 3 teams of pen testers sitting at this table. And we put a bet on it. We were like, if we hack it, you're going to give us the food for free. That was part 1. And then if we get like a certain percentage, he'll give us like a discount. It was that sort of thing. And so like we're sitting there messing up these iPads and like literally they pulled it off of the corporate network. They were screenshotting the menu and then rebuilding this thing to kind of work. And we got to a point where we were as far as we could without having like an actual laptop with us, like a Mac laptop, because then we could have finally like done everything. But somewhere in between the middle of this, there was a manager shift in the middle of the deal.
Oh.
So that guy walks out and he leaves. And this other lady comes by and she's the new manager for the rest of the shift. And she sees us all holding like 4 of her iPads that they're trying to use for menu. And she's like, what the hell is going on? What are you guys doing? And one of the guys, and I swear he was like brand new to the company, like maybe a couple months on the job. He's so proud of himself. He's like, "Oh, we effed this up and we pulled it off of this and we hacked it and blah, blah." And you could like watch this lady like getting visibly like, "I'm going to murder all of you," like over, And I'm sitting there trying to calm him down. I'm like, "Don't use that language. Like maybe that's true to you, but listen to it from her end. You just bricked her entire fleet of iPads for the evening and she has no idea what's going on." And so she's like raging. And luckily that guy who was shifting out had come back and I talked to him and they ended up like giving us a discount and calling it a day. But there was like a real moment where I thought, oh my God, we're going to get arrested for messing around with these laptops because my team is this guy's telling her like, oh, we screwed it all up and we stole all these things and we hacked this. And I'm like, oh my God. Like language, we gotta rephrase.
Wow. I love that. That's
That is
imagine. I imagine like the attitude of a manager's shift change, you're just walking out and not going, by the way, I've just left all of these people here just hacking stuff. Don't mind them. And by the way, I've got a bet on where they will give them free food as well if they get successful. Yeah, don't mention that. Just walk out. It's fine. That's a mad attitude.
It's funny because you say he came back, so I imagine he was walking off and just had like a uh-oh moment like in his head. Like, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Something I was meant to tell her. I know it's something important, damn it. Oh, I love that. That's great.
That's a good DEF CON story, I was going to say.
This is my first one this year I'm going to. So I'm excited for that. I'm going to try and not get arrested.
I'm going to try and get him arrested.
Yay!
Yeah. I was going to say, it wouldn't be a very good DEF CON experience if you didn't at least have some risk of it. I don't know.
Make sure this episode goes out after I've been, because I can just imagine me appearing like border control now, just going.
I think it will come out, actually, judging by the number of recordings we have. So there we go.
It's fine. If I get detained, it's both of your fault. Holding you directly responsible. You might get a phone call.
Fair. I'll vouch for him.
It's a fun con. Yes, I've managed to bully Andy into coming, so that's always good.
Yeah, properly twisted my arm. It's quite a trip for us. It's Vegas is a long way from here, so I don't know if I do it every year, but it's definitely one I'm looking forward to. It's one of those I've been wanting to get to for a very long time. It's more and more cons over in the UK, but they're not the same scale. Yeah, you guys go big when you do anything, but.
That's not right.
And anything from cars, car park spaces, politics, you name it, you go big. So yeah, I am looking forward to it. But yeah, that's good.
That was an impromptu. Literally, we were just sitting there, and the manager was like, "Hey, you guys are hackers. I got a problem. Fix this for me." And I was like, "Yes, we're in on it." I still have pictures of it too. Like I got pictures of the team sitting there with the iPads, like messing them up. It's pretty funny. So.
Especially the restaurant version of, hey, can you fix my printer?
Yeah. Hey, you IT guys, can you fix this stuff? It's probably not the thing to say to a bunch of pen testers who are very known for, breaking stuff, doing the opposite to fixing things. We point problems out. But yeah, good on them for having faith in you guys. Here's a leap of faith, isn't it? Really? Cool. Do we want to talk about displays? As we're talking about displays.
Yes, you have a story about taking over a signage display system.
Yeah, I was working, this was maybe like one of my third engagements when I was just transitioned out of Spider Labs. And it was an interesting system to do an assessment against for a couple of reasons. One, normally when you get a web application, you just get like an application and it's like, okay, here's the website. And at the time, APIs, in the early 2010s, right? People weren't doing a lot with APIs at the time. It was more like the website was the logic app, which was the thing, which is part of the problem with things. And so this actual system was great because it was like, they literally sent me a device. I got hardware sent to my house and it was to set it up. And you had this orchestration system that they were using to do displays over at events, like at a ballpark or at a concert or type of stuff. Like when you see the menu that says, oh, here's what's happening, or here's the food choices for the piece. It was like, they have a system that controls all of that, which makes a lot of sense. It was a really interesting engagement for me because one part of it is they actually called into software I wrote. So that was a fun sort of surprise as we opened it up. To one of your points before about developers, I was a developer before I became a pen tester. And actually twice during my security assessment lifecycle, I ended up getting pointed back to doing an assessment towards things that I wrote or contributed towards, right? And this particular one, the company that I wrote software for, they developed what was like a Flash WYSIWYG type of software where it would make making Flash applications faster, basically, right? Like it's drag and drop, you move your things on, and then it generates a Flash thing for it. And eventually that company got purchased and they integrated it and they started using that software for making signs, which makes a lot of sense, right? We had hooks into it albeit that it was more of like an API call, and I wouldn't say necessarily in scope for the assessment. I still remember because it was like, I think the first time I ran into my own code or a company I work for writing code, and you're like, huh, that's pretty funny. The application was a .NET controller. And basically what they had done, if we were to like flip it around, is they made their own botnet essentially. And so the way that the software worked is every single node on the network could be an admin or a consumer, depending on how you log in, right? So you have this software that's distributed everywhere, and it's not like a central controller for it, but it's like every single piece was its own kind of like controller meets admin for everything, depending on how you did it. And I remember it because this would have been really early, probably like 2012 timeframe, more or less. Microsoft had just come out with a framework they were calling the Microsoft Sync framework. And I think they got rid of the Microsoft Sync framework. I haven't seen much of it since then, but this was built on a lot of .NET tech. And because my background was .NET, basically anything that came through was my background. It's an interesting one because first, I think a lot of people don't understand how semi-compiled intermediary language type software works in general. And so they forget things like you can attach to processes and you can use a lot of like very basic fundamental debugging techniques and get a pretty strong representation of what's actually happening on the back end, because the IL is not necessarily, it's definitely not as complicated as trying to read binary or machine code or assembly, excuse me, but it's like you can also just really quickly retranslate it back into another version of itself, right? And you can attach to the process off of like debugging ports and whatnot. And so I remember getting this software, and obviously the first thing it did was decompile it and look at it, what it's doing, and try to figure it out. I immediately realized that even without having an account, what you could do is you could attach to the running process. And in the running process, you could just literally type in .NET, like, hey, go pull this key for me for the database that's running. And so once I could hook the credentials to the database, all I had to do then was attach to any database on any node, and the sync framework did all of my distribution for me. So all I have to do is like push a file to myself, basically, and then the sync framework picks it up and then tries to push it across all the database instances for every node that was connected to it across the board. And so one, you can hijack anything and everything. I mean, literally, you just go in the database and say like, now it's going to be Rick Astley, which is probably what we ended up doing with it, and then distribute Rick Astley to everything all at once, and it would just push it. The whole framework would push, which is what you want in a signage system, right? But then I also realized like you didn't even need to restrict it to a particular file type, because it'll load it and then actually execute it regardless. And so I ended up pushing like an interpreter shell on every single instance all at the same time from the same one. And I was able to like actually load it, execute it, and then push it out to all of them. And then as it would go through the process of loading signs, it would actually hit my shell and then call back, and I had the entire network running on my computer, which was fun. I mean, it was just a fun engagement because it's like, normally, especially not in 2012, would you get to a system that was that distributed, whatever. But it was funny to see like, they effectively built themselves a botnet that I could just hijack in the middle of at any time I wanted to. Yeah.
That's incredible. What were your recommendations after that? So just burn it all.
I think literally that's what the code was, which is the sync framework comes with a lot of advantages, right? In the sense that it automatically handles the distribution of a database across everything like a mesh network. But it comes with a downside, which is if you store secrets in it, assume it's not a secret. And if you're going to go down that road, you basically can't use that to do logins. Maybe create a central login and then have that be a single node that pushed it out. And those are always the hardest ones, to your point before, which is when you're making an architectural design recommendation, what it effectively means is you need to rewrite most of the software, is what I told them. And I think that's essentially where the direction went on the recommendation, which is for all the advantages you get out of sync, the disadvantages, you can't really lock the database. And I think maybe there was a way to do like a read-only sync, which probably would have been the better way to do it. And if you separate out credentials, that would have probably fixed it. But no, yeah, it was not super great. they were cool about it because it was a product they were building and it hadn't been released. It was just a proof of concept, and they ended up going back and fixing it. But yeah, it was, I think that was the recommendation, which is don't design software like that.
It's good they got the testing of stuff done at the kind of a right time, but like before going massively into production and going down a route where you can't trace back to it.
I was going to say that was rare for 2012.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone was still on the waterfall model in 2012. Like security was like, let's do it last.
Yeah. No, this was good. We caught it before it had really been distributed out to a bunch of things. This company, I think you made a comment, which I think really wise or a smart one, which is the maturity of the firm really does make a big difference in how a lot of these go. And in this particular case, it was a firm that develops software for a living. There are real engineers who are building real products. Not to say that other teams aren't. There's like Shadow IT and there's all these other groups that sort of build things. And I think with the maturity that comes with being a purely dev shop or a product shop, there's a little bit more expectation of assessment and QA and rigor. And so I think they were more familiar with it than others were. They handled that one pretty well.
It's good of them. Could have all imploded, given like the scale of the rewrite that I'm sure was probably needed for that sort of thing. It's not a small undertaking, but at least they don't have. It's always more swallowable when you don't have things like customers or commercial agreements in place, and you have like commercial pressure to do something. That's always where it becomes so super tricky for people to get out of. Because it's like going back to that example I gave you earlier of a telecoms company. It's like this software is in all these different telecoms. So one of the questions they had were like, are we now legally on the hook for if anybody else finds this in their firms? It's like, well, yeah. And it's the scale of things and those commercial discussions has a huge effect on how they handle it, how they handle budgets for rebuilding things, how their timescales for stuff, and it's one of those things that majorly affects organizations and can really anger a lot of people, especially investors.
I think that was the scariest assessment that I've ever, like, not that one, but I think to your point on a report from an engagement we've done, the actual recommendation I advised them on was seek legal counsel as to what implication comes from the security problems you've created. Because the way that they had designed the software, it was a pretty simple engagement, but it was like they were building like a co-sharing, like almost like a WebEx type of thing where we could get on a room, but it was like that whiteboard where everyone can like control the whiteboard and like do stuff. And the way they had built the sharing of the screen stuff, it basically broke all the browser security that that Firefox or Chrome or whatever it was at the time was putting into it, because you would basically proxy all the requests behind it and absorb the real, call it like URLs that were malicious or real whatever. I just pointed out to them, browsers were going through all this work to create protections like anti-cross-site scripting and don't go to these known malicious URLs at the time. And I'm like, literally the way you've designed your software is you've undermined all of the security that these browsers have put together. And it was like, I don't know what that implication is for you, but if someone gets compromised, you might want to talk to a lawyer because you've basically violated a lot of the agreements that come out of the browser. And I don't think they liked that one very much at all, but that's what the recommendation was, which is, I don't know what to tell you, but you might actually be liable for whatever happens because of how this was programmed.
You said it was Flash, right?
No, that one wasn't Flash. The display thing was using Flash and a bunch of other mechanisms.
Oh, okay.
The one with the legal advisement was like, it was like what is WebSocket stuff. It was like cross-browser sharing of information between every user at the same time. So
gotcha. I was going to say, Flash just completely broke the browser anyway. So did like Java Applet, so did Silverlight. That's why none of them exist anymore.
Yeah.
I loved Flash. It was great. Macromedia and Dreamweaver, what a match made in heaven for building websites.
Yeah. Just no, should never have happened. It's a dark stain that we have so far managed to sort of push away.
Purged from the lands. Yeah. I remember us talking, I think we mentioned it in probably a previous cast. They were building a Silverlight application at the time. And it was literally at the time when Silverlight was about to be abandoned and flushed. And it's like, well, we haven't gone live with it yet, but here's our Silverlight application. What do you think of the scope of this? I was like, I don't know where to start. Like the thing you've just spent like all of this money and time on developing is it's about to be abandoned.
Right.
Sorry. Again, that's another hard commercial conversation, because what do you do for supporting that? You either sandbox it and hope it's okay for the next few years while you find something else, or you go back to the drawing board. And organizations, that's such a hard decision to make. Yeah. It all comes back to not doing your homework before you set out on a journey, right? Doesn't it? I mean, some of it.
Right. I always tell people that when you're building software, you should look at like castles and boats, right? There's things that are your core bread and butter, and you should build your castle around the things that we know work, like Java and .NET and these like big major frameworks. Like they're not going to change so radically that everything you wrote a year from now is like useless, right? But when they deliver new software, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that software is going to be around forever. So as you're like exploring the bleeding edge of things, understand that you send out a boat and it might not ever come back, right? You want to go invest in it because there's fruit in that type of stuff. But at the same token, there's like risk associated to it, right? There's risk associated to it. When I was working as a developer, I remember complaining about something to a guy, and I was just like, why don't we just dump this and rebuild it? I can't believe they built it in this language, like blah, blah, blah. I was like complaining. And he looked at me and he said, the reason they built it like that is 5 years ago, there was a guy who stood here exactly like you who said, I can't believe that they programmed it like this. You should have built it in this language. And I was like, touche, I got it, right?
Yeah, it's a very valid point.
Yeah. It's the same reason I get kind of annoyed when people like suggest rewriting huge pieces of software in another language. Like it happens, and this is mostly because I work in web apps, it happens a lot with Burp Suite. A lot of people get annoyed that Burp Suite's written in Java because a lot of people for some reason don't like. I personally like Java. I understand. It's not. Is it the best language in the world? No. Is there a best language in the world? No. There are languages that do good things. There are languages that do bad things. It's probably not the best language for a web proxy tool, but it was back in the day, or it was at least what David knew. But the thing is, it's a 20-year-old code base. If you ask somebody to rewrite that in Rust, which is the language that everyone loves now, like that's getting rid of so many people or having to retrain so many people who have jobs. Like people don't think of the human aspect of it as well. You're basically telling a company, well, you should probably fire your entire workforce and hire a bunch of Rust devs and then spend 5 years rewriting everything. It's just not realistic. I get it. But Java's still actively being developed. Like it's not going away. But yeah, sometimes it sucks when you don't like a language and that's the language you have to deal with. But I'm sorry. Sometimes it's just easier to stick with what you have.
Yeah, there was back in the early days of pen testing, for me, early days, I'll say like 2009, 10, somewhere around that. I mean, it was a while ago. One of the companies had put out a report, literally was like the most secure programming languages by language type of stuff. And in a young, youthful Andrew sort of way, I wrote like a counter thing on it and basically said, this is all stupid. That's not how any of it works. Like security is equally available in most of these languages. I was like, you don't even know how to group your developers, right? You can't just say like, hey, Java's better or Java's worse when you can't even have a baseline of comparison. Like if I went to Google and at the time was super invested in like Java and C++ and things like that. And then I take a .NET developer who's 5 days out of college and I try to compare their ability to securely develop without taking into account the fact that one's a professional and one's a not. And like you can't just like go back into it and say one programming language is better than the other. And the conclusion of the guy's article was like, no, none of them are good. They're all bad and they're all equally messed up. And I was like, that might be true, but your data is completely wrong. And that got me a bunch of negative attention too. But it is what it is.
It's all good. I get so much negative attention for some of my hot takes. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I eat the negative attention. It's delicious.
Oh, no, on a t-shirt. That's fantastic.
Most of the time, I'm half trolling, so it's even funnier. But there we go.
Sometimes it takes me a little while to work out. Sometimes with you and some of your troll posts. I have to double take some of them. I look at them and I go, "Oh, wait a minute! I see what he's done there." So yeah, I just won't comment, and I'll never get caught out by it. I'll just stay safe.
Andrew, how do I catch employees playing Guitar Hero? Like, it's a real problem I have. I think you're a good guy to ask about that.
No, that's funny. So we talked about my first engagement kind of before I moved into professional testing. And then I eventually moved into professional testing. And while I was at Spider Labs, one of the cool things about being at Spider Labs is like they were at the center of everything that was happening with pen testing at the time. We were like a team of like 30, 40 people between the web app, the network. We had a forensics team, and they were in everything. They were in everybody's stuff because at the time they were probably one of the biggest pen testing companies around, actually. And when you join, you get put on shadowing projects. So you're not really expected to be billable right away. Your job is just to go sit on an engagement and try to contribute, but your time's not billed to a customer, which is really smart of them. And so I found myself in a spot where I'm like on engagements, but I have free time. And we had a group chat. And in the group chat, everybody talks. Like we just talk trash all day with each other from different teams and whatever. And there's a guy on the forensics team named Gibran who posted that they were doing an incident response. And while they were pulling everything from the incident response, they found a keylogger. And what was funny about it is the keylogger had actually caught a team of employees playing video games on the computer before the breach basically happened. And so he posted it as a joke and he was like, haha, this is funny. We caught him playing a video game. And people were obviously talking trash, but I had free time. And I thought to myself, Guitar Hero is not like that complicated. I wonder if I could figure out what song they were playing from that, just kind of as like a fun side project. And so I took this dump of the keylogger because he posted it. It wasn't like a secret. And I had this like thesis that said, first, I don't know if you played Guitar Hero or these types of games, but they only have 3 or 4 notes, right? When you're playing it, it's like a chord, right? And so it was like an A, B, C, or D. And depending on the level of complexity in those games, you could actually tell what level they were playing the song at, right? So the beginner was less chords, the intermediate was a little bit more, and then the hard mode was all of them, right? And so you could tell. And so the first thing that I did was I knew what version they were playing. I had that. And I knew because there was only 3 chords that they were playing the song at a specific level, basically. And I could determine that was at a level. And so I had this thesis that said, what if I go ahead and map it out? And originally my thinking was I could pull in all the sheet music because Guitar Hero was popular and they have it and people would post like the how-to guides and you could see it as music. And I found an application that would let me read it in and then like basically turn it into a binary stream of A, B, C, D, D, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And that worked like okay, except the problem is you don't know how the game is recording the keylogger. That was where it became really complicated, right? So you're seeing it as like literally like A, B, 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 C, D, whatever. But the thing that's not actually being expressed at all in that dump is time, right? So I don't know if it was like I pressed an A and I held the A for like 5 seconds and then it was like a B and C. I don't know if it was ABC like a downstroke. In fact, I didn't even know what order they were doing the like ABC. Was it top down? Was it bottom up? Right? Like it's hard to say because it's not music, right? It's not like a real sheet music type of thing that you could map to a known system. And so basically what I ended up doing was at first you reduce your working set. That's what I always tell people in pen testing is when you have a really big problem, make it a really small problem as best as you can, right? And so I got rid of everything I knew it couldn't be based off of what level of difficulty, whatever. And then I pulled all that music and there wasn't a lot of songs. I mean, it's only like 30 songs. It could have possibly been type of stuff. And so you just start going through the music and you look at how these things break out and you can say like, you know, given a set of characters, this is how it might look. And that's actually what I did is I created a bunch of like pseudo sheet music that I held up and said, okay, if you pressed it at once, it could look like this. If it was a chord progression down, it could look like this. And so I mapped it out and I put out a bunch of sheets in front of me. And then I just looked at the sheet and I just kept walking through it saying, hey, I had a significant chunk of the keylogger. And just using that, I was able to drop it down to really a top 3 candidate pool. And I sent that out to the team and I said, based off of this, I'm pretty sure they were playing, it was like some alternative music, alternative rock. I think it was like 3 Door Down, something or other. And I sent it out to the teams like, based on everything, I'm pretty sure this is what the guy was playing. I was about 89% sure that this is what he was playing. And it was awesome because it was my first, I don't call it like stepping into, they loved it. The whole team went crazy with it. They were like super excited. The guy actually went back and told the customer, and we won more work because they thought it was amazing. We like reverse engineered the guy's songs. And he's like, you really guys, you're the best. And it was a fun like little mental exercise of like, literally just here's the ways that it should be broken out. And by the way, you had to account for like, maybe he sucked. That was the part. Like, I don't know how good he is playing the game.
I was about to ask that. Yeah, but he could have just been terrible, played the wrong bloody song. Right. It's got to be like a factor of error in there too.
Well, if you look at like chorus, right? Patterns repeat inside of the song, right? And so you could take those and you could determine kind of anchor points and then work your way out from that, which is I think how I ended up addressing it, which is here's a chorus, we know it's got to show up, or we see the same pattern repeat a bunch of times. And then based off of that, if you have a good enough pattern, you can play it with a degree of confidence or say this is what it was. So yeah.
That's great. Did you ever get to verify with a person who
No.
Nah.
No, we never verified. I don't think they did, but it was pretty great. That was like one of my first not real engagements type of things at Spider Labs.
That's funny. I was just thinking, well, and this is completely, slightly related, but there are like entire speedrunning categories where people play with the Guitar Hero controller, like just regular games.
Yeah. Not
Guitar Hero. It's kind of weird. Like I think there's someone's defeated Zelda or something. Like they defeated a Zelda game with a Guitar Hero controller, which just, I don't know, not related. Just a funny tip there.
I saw someone.
I'm sure there was debugging involved in that.
I saw someone playing Counter-Strike with a steering wheel the other day. Yeah. That was kind of interesting. And then there's another guy who's played something, they play Battlefield or something. They've rigged up like an entire tank system where you load up like bottles of water as like shells and things. That's absolutely insane. People have a lot of spare time on their hands, evidently. It would seem.
It's good.
Yeah, much entertainment for us.
I think the worst part would be losing to a guy using a steering wheel playing Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
How do you live that down?
Yeah. Yeah, at least you got like at least if I did that, at least I'd have a reason why I suck. So I've been going wrong with these years. I've been moving forward by pressing the accelerator pedal. Crazy.
This one, I'm gonna give you the subtitle, I guess, which is the best report I can't tell you about.
Yeah.
Sounds intriguing.
It's going to be really interesting, or it's going to be a very short, we're about to end for podcast here type of conversation. I don't know.
When you do assessments for a long time, you run into a lot of very weird, we'll call them use cases, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the assessments that I was on, we were doing a test for someone. And the problem was everything in that place was need to know basis, right? We were tasked with obviously doing the assessment. They wanted me to come and my team to come to the status update, but we weren't allowed to tell anybody anything unless they were read in type of thing, right? So your job was to give a status update or tell them what was happening on this assessment. But at the same token, you weren't allowed to tell them what was happening on the assessment until after you had clearance. And so, in retrospect, it might have been easier just to give the guy who could like clear you the status update and then let him decide who he wants to pull. And that probably would have been the easier way to do it. For whatever reason, they like insisted we had to go to their daily stand-ups because if we were blocked, they wanted us to be able to talk to the developers, except I wasn't allowed to tell them what the problem was, basically. And so it was really funny engagement in that way. And for whatever reason, they had named it after the Lord of the Rings. That's what they codenamed the project. It had the Lord of the Rings name project. And so I remember just sitting there and laughing about it. And then I don't know where, like it struck me, but I was like, it's sort of a joke that's in a joke where I remember talking to someone and they asked me like what size bus they got hit by at the end of an engagement. He's like, buddy, that's great. I hear there's problems. He's like, how big of a bus did I just get hit by? And it always stuck in my head that maybe at some point I should draw like Voltron figures and be like, you're this level of Voltron screwed, like as a joke. And so anyways, that was like a little private joke I had with the team. And on this engagement, I thought Lord of the Rings, I thought whatever. And so literally we drew a map of Minas Tirith and we just started explaining every vulnerability as like scenes and lore from Lord of the Rings because it was the only way I could explain it to him. And so I had like a whiteboard up and I drew Minas Tirith, which by the way took a lot of time. That's the funny thing that you could have like a billable project of making Minas Tirith on a whiteboard. And I would like just come in the morning and I'd say like, well, here's the gates. And we were able to like jump to the next level and we totally skipped the gates. So this is done. We don't need to do this anymore. And we would just like come in and cross it off. And like at one point I drew the tree on the top and I was like, yeah, we actually figured out a way to go all the way up here. I can't go through the fortress yet, but I totally destroyed like that tree. And this is where we are. and people were, and it was great. Like it was actually really funny for me. And I remember at one point I had to like look up Lord of the Rings lore to explain one of the vulnerabilities because I was like trying to think, how do I tell them like a catapult, that doesn't mean anything. And I was like, okay, so let me tell you about how the smuggle in Amon Pass worked, where the two hobbits were going this way and Frodo was going this way. And I'm walking them through, like literally, I'm like studying Lord of Rings in my hotel room to make sure that I could communicate a status update. And they loved it. Like they loved it so much that when we wrote the final report, they actually had us put some of the diagrams of Minas Tirith and how we destroyed it, like in the actual thing to communicate the report back to everyone. Yeah.
I love it.
Can we start a petition to have all pen test reports globally delivered via artwork now?
No, it's fantastic.
It's going to take too long.
It's going to give them to Andrew.
Yeah.
I can draw a mean Minas Tirith, so if you need...
That's amazing. It did make me think. There was a time, and I think this project was just abandoned by you, Andy, but you did have a Nessus scan to Minecraft plugin.
Yeah, I did.
That would build a Minecraft world based on your Nessus scan.
Yeah, your starting place was always a pub, which I really liked. So you'd fall out of a pub, and then depending on how many low to high severities and different CVSS scoring, depended on how bad the world had got outside. So how much of it was on fire, how many creepers were like wandering around and stuff like that. And it was quite good. It did get abandoned. You're right. I should reinvigorate it.
That's right.
Combine it. So you start with a base build of Minas Tirith.
Yeah, that's going to take long at all. I'll just knock that up.
I'm sure there's files out there. Someone's built a world with like the entire Mordor and everything, I think. So yeah, you'll probably find one. It's probably the entire Middle Earth, actually.
It's way more commercial than it was when I started doing that. Minecraft was still in its infancy back then. But yeah, so there we go.
We'll get Andy on that.
We'll get you on that.
Swift.
Classify the vulnerabilities as different types of attacks, and then just auto feed it into the Minecraft. To like, if it's like an off bypass, you like break the doors, or the doors are busted open.
Oh, you
it's an injection attack. It's like internal.
Infinite detail. Absolute infinite detail.
I'll get Andy on it.
All right.
I like it. I'm sold. I'm in. I want to get...
But you went in on the project.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, we'll set up a GoFundMe and all sorts. Let's go.
It's funny because it's like one of the things I always tell people is a real problem. You know, it's fun that we solved it this way, but it's a real problem, which is people don't know how to visualize what we do. They have no concept of it. I would tell people, like, when you're scoping, if I came to you and said, hey, I got a hand lawnmower, I'm gonna mow 14 acres of your land, you don't have to be a genius to look at the lawnmower and how big that is with land and go, that's going to take a while, right? That's a long time to go through all of that. Yeah. But when you have a pen test and you say, like, this is how long I want to go through the pen test and this is why, or here's what I found and this is what it means, how do you visualize that in a way where someone can compare against it and say, like, what's normal, what's not normal, how does this compare it against others? Like, you might even need to do like 2 different Minas Tirith. This is what the normal fire looks like. This is what normal fire looks like. I don't know. Like, but you've got to, like, it's very complex for people who are not super technical to look at it and go, I don't understand what this means for me. And so anyways, it's just, yeah, I like the idea of drawing pictures and saying, if I was going to destroy you, I'm sending this level of Ultron. That's how bad you are.
Data visualization's got a lot of merit to it. And I know it's something we try and include in a lot of our reports. Obviously not drawing maps for them, but like just trying to help people understand and put things into context and languages. And I think there's a big space in like how we go about reporting generally in our industry for that sort of stuff. Because just giving general, like most of the people that end up requesting most pen tests, certainly where we are, is It's going to be project managers and sometimes non-technical people, and them receiving the reports back where it's just slabs of text with no, oh my God, how do I fix this? How long is it going to take? Type of contextual diagram or something like that, or a scale of badness. It's quite hard. So the more stuff we can give them in our reports for that, like that, I think the better. But yeah, maybe we should start just including maps in all of them.
Yeah. Minecraft, I'm in on it. I like it.
I just like how we've kind of come full circle, because we started off this podcast episode with, the juniors using language like, I effed you up, I destroyed you. And then, okay, well, maybe tone that down a bit, learn how to talk to customers. And now we're, images of Minas Tirith getting destroyed, like, in reports. Screw it. It's full circle. It turns out we can say that. We just have to put it in visual diagrams.
That's all we needed all along. If only you'd known that in your early years. Started testing.
Oh, it's good. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This was amazing. Only the second interview we've done. I've loved both of them so far, Andy.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed both of them. They're both good people. There's one here sat here, so I can't even badmouth him when he sat. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've enjoyed the stories, and we've got a fun new project to reinvigorate as well out of it. You can't ask for more than that, can you?
No, it's fantastic. This is we could look at a generative AI solution to it, because if we put AI, then we could get funding. So
yeah, that's true.
I think we could find someone to throw some money at it if we just say generative AI, Minecraft reporting, sold.
Yeah,
amazing.
Someone to pick it up. If you're out there and you want to invest in an AI startup company building vulnerability visualization, hit us up.
Thank you for having me. This is great. This has been a lot of fun. I was telling you guys earlier that part of this is I try and capture the stories of what I did, and share some of that with my family. And so this is a really great way to start that journey of documenting some of the fun stuff. For a long time in pen testing, you just couldn't tell anyone about anything you were doing. It just was like, the best war stories are the ones where we'd go to DEF CON and sit in a room and tell people in private and promise we were like, for NDA, don't tell everybody type of stuff. But being able to share some of that now, this is decades old at this point. It's great. It's great to finally be able to talk a little bit about some of the stuff we did.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, we're glad you came to share it with us. Let our viewers, listeners know where to find you online.
I pretty much only hang out on Twitter right now. The handle is Kuzushi, Kuzushi. It's a Japanese term for disruption of balance, to take someone off balance. And if you want to chat and talk more, I'm usually there. I have a blog called sendsecurity.io, and I talk about fun pen testing stuff and some of the AI work I'm doing with my PhD thesis. So
awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I've been Tib3rius. He's been Andy Swift. We've been joined by Andrew Wilson. This has been Across the Pondcast. You can find all of our social media links in the episode description or on acrossthepondcast.net. And we will see you next time.
See you soon.